Good day, everyone, and thank you for joining us in the 10th episode of PMI Region 11 Common Ground webinar series. Today, we are going to talk about artificial intelligence, a topic that is very close to the hearts of so many of us here. And it is my pleasure on behalf of the organizers to invite two of our guest speakers today. Today, we are going to be covering specifically about the various facets of artificial intelligence in a discussion format. And I'm very, very happy to invite Mark Broom to this discussion. Mark is currently the Chief Data Officer of PMI globally, and he leads PMI's data and analytics team and is accountable for driving PMI to become a data-driven organization. Prior to this, in his vast 25 years of experience handling both strategy and technology, he has led enterprise analytics divisions, IT integrations through acquisitions, strategic consultants, and multiple other roles. Thank you, Mark, for joining us. It must be really early in the morning for you. Good morning, and thank you for joining us today.
Good morning. Thanks for joining me. I'm looking forward to getting into the conversation.
Thank you very much. And the second speaker for the day is Snehanshu Mitra. Snehanshu heads the Center of Excellence for Data Science and Artificial Intelligence at NASSCOM. As you know, NASSCOM is the chief industry body in India, and as a part of his role, he's responsible for creating and nurturing a vibrant AI ecosystem for India. And that includes everything from incubating startups to leveraging AI for societal good and working with enterprises to deliver co-innovation and promoting academic research and skilling in AI. He also has about 2 decades of demonstrated experience in driving business transformation and delivering business impact through data and AI. Snehanshu, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you so much, Kaushik. Thanks for having me here. And I also hope that everybody who's tuned into this conversation today is keeping safe and healthy. Look forward to the conversation.
Yeah, we're already nearing about 500, and I think today we'll probably reach a little bit more. So to the audience, as usual, there would be an interactive Q&A session at the end of it. Please do type in your questions in the Q&A box only so that we can pick it up and address it to Mark and Snehanshu a little later. So Mark and Snehanshu, let me get you started with what is now an extraordinarily famous quote by Stephen Hawking. He said, AI could probably be the greatest invention of man, and if not used well, could possibly be also our last greatest invention if we don't handle the risks. So to get us all started, everybody here in this room, in this webinar, keeps hearing about AI. Not a day goes by without an article about it. The world is changing rapidly. What is the reality of AI? What is the current context? How tangible or how real is it?
Yes, well, I'll start with that one, and it is a good question. And one of the ways I like to start with that is, where are we in the continuum? And I like to take another, a coined term is AI is the new electricity. That came from Andrew New, who last name spelled NG. And he was a founder of Google DeepMind. He was a founder of Coursera. He's chief data scientist of Baidu. And so what I had done is said, where are we in the continuum? And I actually said, well, if AI is the new electricity, how long did it take for electricity to get to where it is today? And what happened over a period of time? And it really starts with in electricity, it was a Faraday computer, which basically came to its origin in 1821 when it was invented. And it took over 150 years before we actually got to the point of a transistor, which obviously led to the computer age. So what I decided to do, I said, well, let me parallel this with what's going on in the AI world. And I started with Arthur Samuel. He was the first one that's being recognized to develop really the first working program for AI, and it played checkers. And it was really interesting that, he had developed this program, didn't know how it would work out. It was based on some reinforced learning. And he programmed the computer. He worked for IBM. He left it to its own devices, came back and found that he couldn't beat the game the next morning because it had basically learned on its own, and that's AI. And that was in 1955. So if I start moving forward where we are today, we're about 70 years into it. We've developed Big Blue for chats. We've got Siri, and my point is that we're really only halfway through the journey if you want to do the parallel between where we were with AI and where we are with electricity. And we now have Siri. We can talk to a computer. We can actually get comments back from a computer. So my key point is if I had to do a parallel about right now, if I was in electricity, I would have got my first light bulb. And it wasn't again until another 75 years until I got my transistor. Here we are that we've got Siri. So we have a long way to go, made a huge amount of progress, but we're really in some of the early stages of AI and how it's progressing. So to my point is huge progress has been made. It is really becoming a little bit more ubiquitous, but we still have a long way to go where I expect it to be 20, 30 years from now. I'll turn it over to Hanshu. Would you like to, what's your thought?
Absolutely. A nice opening remarks, Mark. You know, and just adding on to what you said, really, I think we are firmly in the middle of a digital renaissance. And AI is the most significant technological advancement that we've seen in our lifetime. And, it is redefining the space around us, it is redefining industries, healthcare, agriculture, education, supply chains, name it, and we got it. I think where this really coming from is very interesting in my opinion, right? So for one, I believe that the barriers to entry as far as AI is concerned is very low. So you can have a single developer be able to create something, right? You can tweak, you can create, you can implement something of your own, and you get rapid distribution of technology. The second is really in terms of if we were to look at the development platform, it is really, really distributed, isn't it? No one organization sort of controls the development platform, and anybody can simply come in and contribute. And this is really giving rise to this whole scenario around rapid proliferation of artificial intelligence. I think where I'm coming from, I see the applications or the transformation around us in three spaces. One is really in the social sector when we talk about that's where arguably most of the implementation today is likely to happen, and it will only become stronger in time. Whether you're talking about healthcare, whether you're talking about agriculture, whether you're talking about education, whether you're talking about criminal justice system, you are getting into the scenario where there are the number of use cases are increasing. For example, let us take healthcare, to start off with. Healthcare, till until some time back, I would say probably still is the case in a lot of different countries. You're constrained by increasing demand. You're constrained by lack of supporting infrastructure, lack of trained personnel, so on and so forth. It needed a major overhaul, right? And with AI coming in, there are threefold benefits that we're getting to see. And I'm just talking about one sector. We are looking at potential, cost savings to patients. We're looking at rise in efficiencies in delivering, healthcare services. You're talking about increasing accessibility of healthcare services, right? So patients, as a result, are starting to get more accurate, more convenient answers in a matter of minutes. Am I audible? Did you lose some part of what I said?
No, Snehanju, you're clear.
Okay, wonderful. So I was just saying, wrapping up my opening comments by saying that, patients are now getting more accurate answers, safe answers. They're getting more, access to healthcare, quality healthcare as a matter of this technological innovation. So I would completely concur with what Mark said, that it is here to stay. We're still, looking at very initial stages of what artificial intelligence could do, and we have a long way ahead of us.
Thank you, Snehanshu. It's really interesting to hear about the stories that you shared, both of you, Mark and Snehanshu. And we can see very well that AI is certainly going to have a positive impact on society at large. But given that AI is an enabler in the current context, I think it would be interesting to hear about some real stories around it, some projects to showcase how this has complemented human intelligence. Maybe Snehanshu, you can answer that first for us.
Yeah, absolutely. So, look, I think we spoke a little bit about the significance of AI in the context of government and society. But generally, what we are seeing, Monica, is that the benefits are a lot more accentuated in the case of enterprises. Today, we are talking about enterprises in general believing that their productivity gains can be up to 40% with the right kind of AI deployment. We are talking about customers can be persuaded, about a third of the customers that visit e-commerce websites can be persuaded to spend more money or think about buying something more if you are to persuade them the right way. And I'll take an example. Probably this example is known to a lot of our audience today. I'll pick up Netflix, right? So there's this interesting article which is now becoming fast becoming a case study in a lot of business schools, that it generated business value worth about $1 billion in 2017. Right? It's very interesting, right? So okay, so I was trying to suggest that there are three major applications of artificial intelligence that Netflix had, and one of which was trying to offer best streaming quality, right, to its viewers by predicting future demand and pre-positioning its video assets closer to its subscribers, that so that at any point of time they get best quality, streaming, and they enjoy the content. The second is what they call the recommendation engine, and this is where the major factor that increases, they believe they increase the relevancy of Netflix recommendations is because machine learning and AI algorithms, continue to learn your browsing behavior. Therefore, more the time that you spend on Netflix, the more, relevant programs get recommended to you. The third is very interesting again. You're talking about personalization of thumbnails, right? The theory here was that most users tend to choose movies or any content not just based on the title, not just based on actors, but also based on the thumbnail description. And they have very smartly, brought in artificial intelligence into this area to make those dynamic, personalized thumbnails, right? The other part of what you asked, Monica, I'll just spend a few seconds on the whole point that you made on AI complementing human intelligence. And this is being spoken more and more today, right? The right mix, as we understand, is where AI and human knowledge will come together. And I came across this article very nicely where it was suggested that, this whole concept is now being termed as human plus AI. So 10% typically of your effort is to code algorithms. The next 20% is to really build the technology around the algorithms. You're talking about data collection, you're talking about building the user interface, you're talking about integrating it into the legacy systems. But the 70% of effort is putting together people and processes to maximize the real outcome, right? So if you were to look at today e-commerce websites, right? Human beings are coming and setting caps on prices that are being suggested by the pricing engines powered by sophisticated AI algorithms. Why? This is important because algorithms today can recommend shockingly high prices to unsuspecting customers. And you never know, they might even accept those prices, right? And this is where the human intervention is really coming. And likewise, in the case of crime prevention also, where you're doing the criminal profiling, you're talking about creation of those data sets and mining that information. But at the end of the day, you're seeing that human intervention come in, the human layer come in to rationalize all this information. So that is going to be the way forward for us.
Thank you, Snehanshu. Interesting details. Mark, what do you have to say to this?
Yeah, a couple things. I think that was some excellent points that were just brought up, and with respect to improving the overall experience for customers, and we're all seeing that today with Netflix. But we're also seeing in other areas. If you look at the what's happening in the medical industry right now, radiology is very, very expensive, and there's a limited set of resources to deliver on people looking at X-rays, MRIs, and we're now finding that the technology now is getting to be equal to or better than those radiologists reading some of those X-rays. They're now looking at how they're going to include AI right into the machines that are doing the X-rays and the MRIs so they can do that interpretation. And again, that's just another great example of where we've got limited human resources and how do we complement that. We're also seeing the same with robotic process automation. And I like to go back to the day in the agriculture before we actually had machines, would have hundreds and hundreds of people that would be farming. And as we saw, with the industrial age, now all of a sudden we have machines that are taking over what thousands of people had worked that they had. It's very labor intensive and repetitive. Well, we're seeing the same thing right now with robotic process automation, where if you go into finance and other areas, there's hundreds of individuals that would just do repetitive jobs. And now what we're able to do is reallocate them where they can actually use their human intelligence to make decisions, and we let the robotic process automation do the work for them. And I think the key point that I want to make is what we're looking to do is have the human do what they do best, and it's their intellect that we really want to leverage. And we want to look at this technology we're putting in place to do more of that repetitive work, which frees up the human to do what they do best, and that's think and think creatively. And you see the same thing what's happening in agriculture today. How do we make decisions in terms of where we necessarily may want to irrigate so we can protect that resource, which is water? That's being supported by machine learning AI. You look at what we do with drones today, a lot of the work, a lot of the technology is AI and machine learning based on how they fly and decisions that they're making, where they may have to fly into a fire condition, which would be dangerous for humans. We've now got robotics that are doing that. So again, I think the key theme is that what we're doing with AI is very similar to what happened in the industrial age. We're really trying to eliminate that repetitive work that humans did so they could use their brain to do what they do best and start using technologies to perform that repetitive work. So that would really be some of the areas that I would really emphasize. What I see certainly over the next 5 years, where the real game is being played right now, honestly, is in that whole area of reducing that repetitive work that humans have to do and let the machines do that work.
Uh, Thanks, Mark. And just picking up from what you said, right? And if these machines with machine learning and artificial intelligence are going to pick up more and more of what human beings do, and Alan Turing nearly predicted it 50 years ago, saying that the machines are going to beat our feeble minds, his words, not mine, and going to take over. So, what is the flip side to this entire argument? So, right now, it says it frees us up to do more creative thinking and more cognitive work, but what is the flip side to whole AI? Can they replace even cognitive thinking? We all seem to be stuck with our Netflix screens and not doing any creative thinking anymore.
Well, I don't know. Let's go with the Netflix. I think that's a great point. The Netflix, really, you're still making the decision of what you like and what you don't like. What it has done, it says, wait, you mean I don't have to search through thousands and thousands of points of contact? So to me, it freed up my time to help point me in the right direction of things I might like. The same thing applies with human and human intelligence. Most of the work that's being done today, even with the radiologists, they now can take the information that they get from the machine learning, the AI tools, and then that actually goes to them. Now, what's the benefit of that? Well, the benefit is that they haven't had to go through hundreds and hundreds of x-rays, burning out their brain and potentially missing the most important points. So really what's happening is now this filtering process. Okay, I've looked at 10,000 the AI machine. I've narrowed it down to 10 that the humans really need to focus on. Isn't that what you want the human to do? And, I place the same thing and the same concerns, like I'd say, in the agricultural age. All these individuals that were displaced, that were farming. Well, you know what? The unemployment is basically better than it was when we displaced those people in the agricultural age, and now we find them doing more upscale work that's safer for them to do, healthier for them to do. And the same, I believe, is going to apply 50 years from now, that we have the same concerns we had now than we did with the industrial age. And the beauty of the human, the way we think, we adapt and we adopt. And I believe that's going to happen. And you're right, we can take a negative tone to this and say, well, it's going to replace us all. And I guarantee if you went back 50 years ago, those farmers that were picking had probably had the same concerns. But you know what? We adopted and we adapted. We're the ones that created this, and it's up to us to best leverage it. Just like anything else we build, machines can be, death traps also. It's how we choose to use these technologies as humans, of whether or not we're going to get the true value out of it. And will it displace jobs? Absolutely. It's going to displace a huge number of jobs, but there's going to be new jobs that are going to unfold. But at the end of the day, we'll all end up with better jobs, and maybe we won't have to work so hard, and we can use our brain more and spend more time with our kids and family. and really helping them being better citizens because we've got now tools in place with AI that can do some of that laborious work that we don't necessarily have to do.
Snehanshu, do you want to build on that? Because I still think that there are certain things that we as humankind have to be wary about. I think maybe because of a lot of the movies that Netflix suggested about all the machines taking over and winning.
Let me take a step back, right? And I mean to be realistic about where we stand. So at times whenever we're confused, right, and we need guidance, support, at times it's a good idea to look back into history and what history really teaches us. Now, since the first industrial revolution, Kaushik, we've seen an ongoing and accelerating impact of technology in jobs. There's nothing new that we are talking about in a certain way, right? By and large, I would suggest that there are three outcomes. Technology has eliminated some jobs at that point of time. It has changed how certain jobs are done, and it has created newer kinds of jobs or categories of work. Right now, I would say that applications of AI in business are still emerging, like Mark and I spoke about a little while back. But one thing is certain: it will have an impact on jobs, right? So I'll completely agree with Mark there. And a Forrester report a while back suggested that in the 7 years, you will have as many as 25 million jobs being displaced by AI, and it will create about 15 million new jobs, right? So the direct inference is, hey, we are 10 million negative, and that is partly because of the fact that we haven't been able to fully reimagine what the new jobs of tomorrow would look like. Now, we can't say with certainty how the job market will respond or be impacted by AI in its entirety. These are still speculations, these are still projections and extrapolations, right? But the thing is that we need to understand that uh, places where tasks are very well defined, that is where the impact of displacement will probably be the maximum, right? There is no chance really of competing with frequent high volume tasks. AI will always be ahead of us in carrying out those kind of tasks and jobs for us. The third point, and I was hinting at this point, in the second observation that I made, that AI will likely replace tasks than jobs, right? And at least in the near term, that is what I believe. Newer jobs will emerge. That is where we need to be optimistic. And it is just that it is a little hard to imagine what those jobs are going to be and how they will end up making up for the losses that they're creating, right? These newer jobs will sort of leverage your core skills that we offer as human beings, which is to do with your ability to collaborate, your ability to create something new, your ability to interpret complex communication, ability to work across different cultures, different work environment, different organization structures. We are already seeing some of these jobs emerge. This is not that I'm talking about a very distant point of time. There is a real need of a lot of AI engineers. There's a real need of a lot of data scientists today, and these numbers are only growing every year, right? So I think I still will have a very optimistic view of where we are headed. The confusion that comes in is big because we may not be able to completely reimagine or imagine the jobs of the future.
Thank you, Snehanshu and Mark. I think that's a very, very interesting point that AI will replace tasks, not jobs, and I think a lot of the people in the audience would be super happy to hear that. But yes, I think the new normal, as in what will be the new kind of jobs that will come up, is something which is still quite ambiguous, and we're looking forward to hear that. Um, Now that brings us to the next actual question, right? Now the audience in this session are mostly from the project management community. So specific for this audience, what would you advise? How can we prepare ourselves to be ready for the new normal? What would you advise? Maybe Snehanshu, you can start.
Yeah, I would love to take that. And this is just a point of view, Monica, right? But I'll see what I have in mind. Now, let me just be a little dramatic and say that if you're feeling threatened, try and become an intelligent adversary, right? It is important that we also have that kind of perspective in mind. It is now very well understood, right? that AI likes bureaucracies. AI operates like bureaucracies. It is very, very rule-based, right? And it sort of favors procedures over human judgment, and the process it creates certain kinds of bias. AI is also not all pervasive. It is also not likely to become all pervasive, at least in the near future, right? And you can quote me on this. The question is, what do you really do as a project manager? And these are two or three things that really come to my mind. One is there is a need, Monica, today to critically evaluate the role that we are playing. Ask yourself a fundamental question: to what extent is your job reducible to frequent, high volume, repetitive tasks, right? And what extent or what part of your job involves tackling newer situations? AI is not very good at tackling new situations. So that's a question that we got to ask ourselves. And the whole hypothesis again leans in the fact that if the job that you're doing is routine, it is optimizable, it is repetitive, those are the ones that are most susceptible to getting replaced, taken away by machines. The complex, the creative aspects will still continue to be human domains, and that is where you will thrive, right? So let us say you're a project manager, and you take a look at your job, and say that you find that maybe at the project initiation stage, whether it is to do with assembling teams, whether it is to do with creation of task lists, whether it is to do with coming up with a project schedule or quality management tasks, even monitoring and control, for example, right? A lot of these tasks are very, very well defined, and those, in my opinion, are going to be at risk from a project manager standpoint. Now, then what does that really leave us with? I believe aspects that are complex, such as change management, such as resource management, not in terms of handling teams, but handling people's motivations, interests, right? Upskilling, those are the kind of things that I'm talking about. There are aspects of project management that focus exclusively on collaboration, compiling and applying of best practices, right? Those are the aspects that will again be relatively at lower risk. That is number one, which is where you need to have an honest conversation with yourself. I think the second thing, very, very importantly, and this is where a lot of focus is coming in, Monica, where we're talking about constantly wanting to expand your horizon, right? Traditionally, it has been suggested that project manager's job is not that of an implementer, but one of conductor of projects, right? It is about managing a bunch of activities, tasks, managing the team. But I believe it is time to come up with a newer or a revised set of KPIs for project managers. One that is more consultative, that is focused on creating business value, that is looking at driving adoption of project outcomes, right? That is in terms of proposing new ideas. And all of this will happen when you start becoming more and more consultative in nature, and you also start acquiring some of those functional skills, business skills. Now, understand the fact that AI will not make strategies for your business, at least not anytime soon, despite the recent advancements that we are talking about. And that is the place that you could, step up and occupy. Point number three, and then I'll just leave, with this point. I believe the whole point around picking up the new age skills. Now, technology will significantly impact the skill requirements, and hence I believe that digital skills would need to be acquired. They will have to be at the forefront. You will have to improve your knowledge about how the data-driven world really works. So everything to do with data science, and we're talking about AI today, not just data science. Try and expand your knowledge to also include, aspects of data privacy. GDPR is having a profound impact, right? It came 2 years back, and we are all talking about it. We are seeing the implications. Also, try and understand aspects of ethics, security, regulatory matters, compliance issues. All of these things you will need to progressively, as a project manager, want to get a hold of. So I think I'll leave with those 3 points. Hopefully, will in some point of time take more questions around these 3 points, right? But I'll hand it over to Mark for his views.
So I look at this and I'm going to break it down into 2 parts. The first part is how is AI impacting the project manager, and how will AI play a role in supporting the project manager? And then I look at the other side. What does the project manager need to do if they're going to have to be managing AI projects? We're talking about a greater prevalence in AI projects. And, I can assure you that in PMI, we have AI projects in multiple areas. One, we're looking at ways that we can deliver a much better experience for our members and customers. As we mentioned, the Netflix examples, building out recommendation systems, build out topic modeling systems so we can deliver the content that's meaningful to our project managers in their lifetime journey as a project manager. The other thing we're looking to do is deliver a different type of experience, better marketing capabilities to attract those individuals that would gain the most from being project managers. And again, those are all based on a wide range of machine learning tools. We're also capturing a lot of information with respect to our interactions we're having with our customer, which is something called voice of the customer. And that voice of the customer, it takes information that we're receiving in our customer care and allows us to assess what the sentiment is and what the effort it is working with PMI. And again, the reason I'm mentioning that is so now we've got AI prevalent in our marketing area, in our content area, in our digital area, and it just continues to expand. And if that's the case, one, if you're a project manager, you're going to have to say, how do I effectively understand how to manage an AI machine learning project, and what makes it different? And it is different, and it's different for a number of reasons. And I'd say the first one is that word data science. It's a science. And with science becomes a lot of experimentation. And why that's important is if we were brought up, and certainly I was 20 or 30 years ago, with the more waterfall approach where I would actually work on a project, would put our requirements together, and effectively we knew what we had to build. And when I was developing the software, we as coders would develop the rule set to deliver that transaction process to our customer. But that's not really the case with machine learning and AI. We don't know what we're going to get at the beginning. And we are not writing software code with rules. What we're really doing is we're leveraging models and feeding these models data, and then those models are learning. And some of those learnings are going to be meaningful, some of those are not. So if you're a project manager, as was mentioned, is you're going to really have to learn more about the terminology, and you'll find in machine learning and AI, you're going to want to learn about what are these different models. You're not going to be developing the models, but certainly when you're working with the team, you're going to want to understand what they're talking about. The other thing is, how does one determine quality? Now, the way we tested transactional systems would have a number of people that basically test in your application, and off you go and say, yeah, this looks good. It's ready to have that happen. Not with the machine learning. The machine learning, we're using terms like accuracy, precision, recall, ROC curves. And I think it's going to be really important for the project manager to really understand the terminology, so at least they can understand quality characteristic of what's being delivered. And it won't no longer necessarily be in the terms of individuals sitting in front of a screen and pressing keys. It's going to be based on the results of these models and testing. So my recommendation number one for those that are project managers, you're going to see a greater prevalence of ML and AI projects. I think it's a great place if you want to think ideation of where do I want to take my project management. How about building up those skills so you can raise your hand and say, yeah, I've got a degree of proficiency and I really want to be working with those individuals building out these AI technologies, and that's a great opportunity. So that's, one side that's important. The other side is, well, how is AI affecting the project manager? And I spent a lot of time when I go to different events, talking to companies and trying to understand, how are you using AI? And, honestly, it's really nascent. It's really just in its beginning stages. And I've only really honestly found two areas. And again, these were, probably the most contemporary and leading organizations that were using AI to support the project manager. And it was in one area with robotic process automation, where they were finding that their project manager were performing a lot of repetitive tasks. and they were using robotic process automation to perform that role for them, to free them up to do what they needed to do. And the second area that I found was where they were looking to find out how they could match individuals within their organization to projects. And again, now the organization I'm talking about are organizations with over 100, 150,000 employees. And I only found one. And what I found was really interesting about that is that what they were trying to deal with was a problem that every project management team deals with. Program managers and executives find that when teams come together, they have a tendency of always wanting working with the same people. And there's a reason for that. You build a level of confidence, you build a level of trust. But the issue is when you're a larger organization, you need to be able to cross-pollinate. So what they had done is they had built this technology that would, recommend to the project manager who ought to be participating on that team. They left it up to the project manager and the leads in the team to determine who would participate. But what they did say is, if you do run into problems, you are going to get, I'm going to call it, beat over the head because you didn't take the recommendation of the machine learning tool that suggests to you what the optimal team structure should be and who these individuals that should play. And I look at that sort of as similar, if anyone's familiar with what we call reinforcement learning, is this whole premise between evaluation and exploitation. And the whole premise there is that when you achieve a high score, what happens is you will continue on that path and you won't exploit. And you won't exploit to find out where you might get a higher score. And I think there is a tendency within the human being that we are risk averse, many of us. And what we're doing is we're exploiting what we're learning, but we never actually evaluate what new options are out there. If you think about that's what this tool is providing them, is an opportunity to evaluate and bring in new skill sets. So that's an example of the two examples that I found where companies are using machine learning and AI to help the project manager. The other thing I thought was really interesting is I was reading a book. It's a very good book called Creativity Inc. If you ever get a chance to read it, please do. It's about Pixar and how they develop films. And, the CEO was talking at the time, and they asked him, well, how do you know if one of these projects is being successful? He didn't say, let me look at my task list. Let me look at my project list. Let me look at my budget. What he did, they would go to the individuals on the team. And he'd be able to sense from the individuals on the team of what their confidence was in the leadership of that initiative, the constant work they were doing. And he said that was my leading indicator of whether that project was going to be a success or not. And the point that I'm making there is that's where the human intelligence has to come into play. And I think we've all seen that it's possible that I could build a machine learning tool that would say, hey, this budget is spot on, the tasks look good, but you know what? The human beings are the one that know what the real success is. So the takeaway point there is, as you're a project manager, it's really that level of intelligence you're bringing into play. It's the ability to leverage complementary, these AI tools that are available to you that you want to leverage. And the last point I want to make is you want to think about where you want to grow your career in the future. You know that there's going to be more and more AI machine learning projects, and it will become ubiquitous. Build those skill sets so you can be effectively able to manage those projects. So that's the point I'll leave you with.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Snehanshu. I think in the last 45 minutes, I think we've covered a wide variety of AI-related thoughts, and there are a lot of questions, nearly 50 plus questions. But two themes reoccur multiple times in the questions. The first one is who takes accountability in a very high level? Who takes accountability for decisions made by AI? What is the legal framework or process framework that's available in various countries today, or who drives that? Are there laws related to that? So the whole ethical and process framework around AI. So what happens if that radiology machine that you refer to makes a wrong decision and something untoward happens to the patient? Who's responsible? So what is the laws and the frameworks around AI currently available?
All right, so let me take the point of the radiology tool. The one thing I was very clear about, which is really important, there is still a human that's intervening in this. And that I wanted to make sure we don't lose track of that. So we're not leaving it to the machine to inevitably, at least at this point, make that decision. The goal is for the machine to identify those high-risk X-rays that require human intervention to be looked at. Regarding the laws that are in place, first I want to be clear, I'm not a lawyer, so I can't provide any legal advice whatsoever. And I think you're going to find the laws are going to be very, very different country by country. What you'll find in the Europe, compared to certainly in North America, United States, compared to China, are going to be drastically different. Why? Because they're culturally different, their legal systems are different, their politics are different, and their governments are different. So I think you're going to see it evolving, and I'd say, from what I see in this area, I think Europe is certainly, in terms of what they've done with GDPR, privacy, protecting the individual, I view them in many cases sort of leading in some areas. And, if I look at what's happening in the United States, there's different states like California that are looking to put in rules and how the government plays. At least the United States is. The government changes every 4 years or 8 years, and depending on who's in power at the time will determine, to the degree of what they want to put a legal framework in place to really protect us as individuals. So the point is, it's going to vary country by country. I think you're going to find other countries, some more conservative, some more liberal, some more authoritarian, and each of those are going to be dependent on what framework we'll put in place. So unfortunately, there won't be any universal, set of laws established.
Snehanshu, from a NASSCOM perspective, would you like to add to that? Is NASSCOM working with the government in India to do something? Any specifics that you can add?
So I think that it all has to come together, Kaushik. These may seem like disparate attempts, efforts driven by different, entities, different countries, different corporations. But I think from what I'm seeing right now, there's a silent movement growing within the ranks to try and consolidate, try to create synergies, try to learn from each other, try to collaborate. And that is only growing by the day. Just 2 days back, I was a part of what they call a GPAY. GPAY is Global Alliance on Artificial Intelligence. And then, the pillars that they were talking about really resonate with the theme, right? They're talking about the ethical part, they're talking about responsible AI, they're talking about data governance structures, they're talking about commercialization of products, access to each other's markets, etc. I will have a slightly different point of view. I believe while these seem to be very disparate in the short term, over a period of time, unless we collaborate, we cannot allow one nation to become so powerful that it completely monopolizes artificial intelligence. And this is a growing risk, something that people are starting to realize, and which is where you're seeing another movement across the world, where in small measures people are trying to exchange notes, share what their vision of success really looks like, and how it is trying to serve different sections of the society. So it's very interesting. I agree it will take time, but I also believe that that is the way forward for us. From a NASSCOM's perspective, I'll just leave you with this. From NASSCOM's perspective, I think our remit is largely India, but in saying that technology has no boundaries, right? You will have to coexist. We are focusing on some key initiatives, as far as artificial intelligence is concerned, whether it is to do with, coming up with this whole open data platform, because data is the raw material. Unless you democratize access of data across for all entities, individuals, and I spoke about how AI is different, as in a single creator can make a huge difference and come up with an intelligent solution. So the true sense is how to make data really, really fluid, really accessible, and you do not allow more powerful enterprises to sort of take ownership of it, right? So in deciding this, you're talking about data governance, data ownership, how do you split the commercial gains, right? et cetera, et cetera. That is one area that we are very deeply working on. Other area which does not receive as much focus in these conferences and webinars is this whole area around skilling, right? And very happy to suggest that we are taking a deep interest in ensuring that not just professionals, but students and primary school students also start getting exposure to the practices, foundational practices of artificial intelligence. So I think the focus is really twofold. One is is showing India the way in terms of how some of these more difficult, complex things can be achieved around securing an open data policy, but also working on the other end of the spectrum where you're trying to develop the foundational knowledge and creating an entire generation of trained professionals.
Great. Sehanji, you also touched upon skilling, and Mark, you touched upon it earlier as well. Ruchita Malik says, can you elaborate a little bit more on what we mean when we say digital skills? I think digital skills is a vast uh, spectrum. So would any of you like to break down a little bit when you say all project managers, or for that matter, all of us have to develop digital skills? Are there any specific skills? Can you point them towards something specific?
Yeah, I mean, I would, I was more, digital skills is incredibly broad. So I was really more focusing and emphasizing in terms of AI and machine learning. And the key point that I was making there in terms of skills, it's both a combination of skills and building experience. So I always find if you're a project manager, it really pays to understand something about the industry that you're in and the technology that's being implemented. So with respect to machine learning and AI, you're implementing effectively mathematical models. That's what they are. And those mathematical models consume data. And based on consuming the data, it's identifying patterns and making decisions. The data scientists are working to select models, to tune the models to get the optimal results. So the point that I was making there, if I were a project manager, I wouldn't necessarily want to know how to develop these mathematical models, use these mathematical models. But I certainly would want to understand if I'm going to manage a project and try and put a schedule together, recognize the difference between a data science project, which is experimentation, and set the appropriate expectation of how long it would take to complete a project. Also recognizing that the project may fail. But I can very easily develop a process. Look, I'm going to develop a piece of code. That piece of code is going to ask an individual to give me information. I'm going to take the information back and deliver a report. Straightforward. I can tell you exactly what the time frames are. However, if I'm going to develop some machine learning to make some decisions on who are the best individuals that I should market to, I'm going to put topic models together where I'm going to take a whole corpus of data and put it in labeling it in topics that people will understand. Until we get into the nuts and bolts of it and use the natural language processing and all these other tools, I really don't know what's going to come out of it. And I may assume that it'll take 2 months, but I may have to do a lot more experimentation than is expected. When I do that work, then the next question is, well, how do I even determine how good that model is? Well, there's all sorts of techniques to determine whether a model is performing well. And it certainly would be nice for a project manager to understand as you're talking to a data scientist as they share what those results are to be able to interpret that. And the other thing I also find lastly is that when you're working with individuals on a team, it's good to understand their terminology. So that way you can speak with them and have some comprehensive understanding. And it's the same thing that people get aggravated when the effort increases. Same thing when people are going to different countries, they may not understand the language. And it's very hard for the other individual, and there's a degree of frustration. It's just natural for all of us because we're having to interpret. Well, the same applies for projects. And the more the project manager can talk to data scientists, it reduces that effort, it reduces the frustration, allows them to build that trust and confidence. So for me, when I look at digital, I am at this point just talking about that machine learning in terms of the expertise that one would build. Now, if you're building a digital front end, a user experience, UX, there's other skills that you probably also want to build at the same time if that's if that's the work you're going into. And the last point I'll make is things are becoming much more and more specialized. It's just the way it is. And you've got to figure out what are those specializations where do you want to play? Because you can't be everything to everybody. It's the same with machine learning and AI. Someone may be very good at natural language processing, but it doesn't mean that they're going to be able to do reinforced learning and now build robotics, So figure out where you want to play, figure out those skills you want to build, and recognize you're going to have to pick your targets. I would leave that with that.
It's very interesting. Sorry, it was very interesting. But when we talk about digital skills, and this is probably a question from 4 or 5 people, maybe Snehanshu, you can answer this one. How does the whole AI world apply itself in other industries which are not heavy on IT? And specific questions around how, we did talk about farming, but how is it being implemented in, let's say, automotive or manufacturing or even biosciences? And do you know of any stories that have come about how artificial intelligence has helped in the COVID research now?
It's very interesting that you talk about these kind of use cases. As a matter of fact, in 2018, and I would really suggest that this topic is of interest to a lot of people, that they go and read up the AI strategy document that NITI Aayog from an India standpoint had put out, right, sometime around May or June of 2018. And this is going to be a little bit of an India-specific answer that I'll give, right? So there are 4 or 5 very distinct areas that were identified. If I recollect some of them correctly, they were around agriculture, they were around education, they were around mobility, right? They were around smart cities and stuff like that. So where AI is sort of getting a lot of traction from is its use cases in some of these areas. Now, we at NASSCOM, again, deferring back to what we're doing a couple of months back, Kaushik, there was this whole situation where governments, a lot of different state governments and central government included, wanted to have a certain kind of visibility around how this whole COVID situation is progressing, right? It was not a pandemic that anybody was prepared for, and to that extent, there was a lot of uncertainty. And we found ourselves to be in the middle of what I term as the AI emergency. AI had to deliver, and there was no net practice, so to speak, right? So we were just right in the middle of action. And the whole idea was, how do we get to a point where we start sharing some fundamental insights with the government and then build on top of that? It was a very interesting use case because government till that point of time did not have a very organized way of collecting data, and that probably showed us the importance of doing that going forward. Not having a data platform, organizing that information, validating it, right, developing this whole analytics engine, and then generating a series of insights that goes right to a patient level, to a PIN code level or a zip code level for the benefit of people dialing into the US. Talking about what is the kind of availability of beds across different hospitals, how many people are coming, getting recovered, what is the past medical history. And all of this really was done in about a month's time. It was an industry effort, but it just showed that you've got the willingness, right? And if you've got the right kind of support from people around, it could do wonders. And today, those kind of insightful dashboards are very much a part of COVID, war rooms across a number of states where we have implemented this. It is being used regularly. And then likewise, I think there are a lot of different applications, even in the field of agriculture that we are talking about, even in the field of mobility that we are talking about. The whole idea is to, again, bring in a little bit of equity into the way we are allocating resources from the point of view of government, right? To ensure that all the sectors find benefit in government schemes. How do we try and collect feedback from them? How do we increase the speed of delivery of public benefits to them without any middlemen, without any hindrances, without additional bureaucracy? So these are very, very interesting areas. But again, let us be realistic. Let us be realistic in the sense that for us to see these changes across the entire world, it will take, I believe, at least a decade or more. right? Many places where this COVID situation taught me, many setups are absolutely not, taking the first set of steps needed to leverage the power of AI, and that needs to change.
Yeah. One thing I'd like to add there is I actually I almost get to the point of where it's not beginning to play. It's not where it's playing. I'm very much involved with a lot of different startups in the Philadelphia area, and you're seeing it everywhere. It's, what are they doing with utilities to figure out exactly, the optimal ways to deliver power? There's individuals building up these legal systems that actually are beginning to say, which is the best way to present a case to win. I'm seeing it in the medical spaces. I'm seeing it in biotech, where you may not be aware of, even like with mass spec, where they're looking at RNA and DNA and analyzing that. Now these are building these machine learning tools. You're not even aware that they exist. So I think that in every industry, it already is beginning. People are beginning to test and evaluate it to solve a set of business problems. And I think in 3 years, if we had the same session, people would say, can you tell me where it's not being used? Because I can tell you in almost every industry that I participate and been involved with, it is being tested and evaluated, and in many cases being used. If I went to PMI a year and a half ago, the word machine learning was meaningless. We're now looking at building at least 5 different machine learning models affecting the experience, affecting our marketing area, affecting our content area. And that's a 500-person company. So come back in 3 years and ask us, and I think they're going to ask us, where is it not being used?
Yeah, I think we'll have to take you up.
So, sir, if I can just slip in a sentence or two more here. It was interesting. In our Center of Excellence, we keep on going back into talking to a lot of industry experts. And a year and a half back, we did a study on AI adoption in retail. And we found that there were, from India's standpoint, there were just about 8 or 10 use cases for AI. 1.5 years back. Just 2 months back, we redid the entire survey, and this time around there were 55. Right? And we said, well, that does not sound quite right. Let us try and do this in BFSI. It was a very, very similar story. So the rate of adoption is much faster than we think it is. And I'm sure at some point of time we'll try and do a similar story in agriculture, and we'll also find similar things coming up.
I mean, and I think I would love to take up your option of calling you back, because we are running out of time. There are still a lot more questions, so I'll put you both on a spot. There is a question from Ashwin about good collateral or good books to read. So these are my last 2 questions to both of you. Can you give us one big takeaway that we all should go away today, and what is your recommended reading? Just a quick rapid fire question.
I'm a big believer in courses. So I would strongly recommend, working through Coursera, Udemy, Udacity, and where I'm hesitant to give a book is that there's just so much relevant data in there. What are you trying to understand? And whoever's got that question, shoot me something on LinkedIn, and I'll provide you a recommendation. Because I don't know really where to start, because I could be here for 10 minutes listing different books. It depends on the problems that you're trying to solve and what you're trying to understand.
And Mark and Snehanshu, thank you so much. And I will leave that as a last thought for the day. Both Snehanshu and Mark are available on LinkedIn, and we did check with them. They are open to receiving connection requests, so please do connect with them and stay connected. And Snehanshu, I like what you said about getting on board, and I think that's the most important message that we are after ourselves. Thank you very much for spending your time again today with all of us, nearly 750 people today, so you know how important this topic has been. To everybody on the line, again, I'm repeating things that we do every time. PMI does offers a host of online courses on various topics, some of them on digital transformation and leadership essentials, so do check them out. And the all-important question, the PDU for this session, you can make use of the PDU on the screen, 2000 UX 9N JC, and claim your PDUs. And I hope to look for hosting you all again in the next session. Again, a double header, but this time from 2 people very closely connected with the PMI volunteering family. Karthik Ramamurthy from Chennai, a founder and consultant at Key Results. He's going to talk about people-centered leadership. Vivek Sonar, who's general manager with Mahindra Trucks and Bus Division, he's going to talk about balancing between the head and the heart in crisis situation. Again, promises to be a wonderful session. Once again, Mark, Snehanshu, thank you for joining us today. To all the participants, thank you. Stay safe. Have a good week.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you.